Hello everybody, Andy here from Glass Half Dead, the #1 kill team channel in the internet, unless you are aware of any other channel in the internet at all. Anyway, I want to talk to you today about something that is released every year. It's called the ICV2 kind of data, sales data, and basically it's an independent company that takes a look at a very specific distribution system, which I think is something called the Alliance Distribution Network, and I think it only takes into account North American sales. There are a bunch of other issues with the way it tracks data, but the way it tracks data is literally the only way and the most accurate way that anybody out there is currently tracking data for wargaming sales. Sorry, miniatures sales, not specifically wargaming, as we are about to see. So I want to take a look at those numbers. Sorry, it's not numbers, it's just rankings. It's 1 to 10. Take a look at the previous year's rankings and see what's there, what's not. Let me just get it straight out of the way. Yes, Warhammer 40k is #1. It always will be, always has been. Cool. Let's move on from that. That's not what we're here to find out. Really, we're looking at where does the rest of GW line up and in what way does that relate to everything else. And yeah, I just want to talk about that. So let's get straight into looking at the numbers, okay? Because once we've seen the numbers, we can then extrapolate, consider, contemplate, etc. So this is this year's numbers. This was posted on Reddit. It's very interesting. So let's start with the obvious. Warhammer 40k Games Workshop is #1. Nobody thought it wouldn't be. There you go. If you do a very quick look on Google Trends, this is, where is number 4? Number 4, Age of Sigmar, okay? Now, we all know that 40k outsells Age of Sigmar. That's not even a question. Cool. And there's more to be added to this in a moment, but let's start with this factoid first. If you go to Google Trends allows you to see how many people Google a certain phrase, word, game, book, movie, whatever. You can define that for yourself. And basically, if you type in Age of Sigmar and you type in Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar doesn't move the line, okay? If you add to this Google Trends search, Kill Team and Age of Sigmar are the same. They're almost in line with each other on the Google Trends. And again, 40k way above them, okay? Now, obviously, there could be more reasons for this. We'll get to that later. Let's continue looking at the tiers. So we then have Battletech by Catalyst Games Lab. This is, I'm shooketh. This is really interesting for me because, no, we'll keep going and I'll talk about that. Then we have Nolzor's Marvelous Miniatures by WizKids. This is D&D, in case you don't know. We then have Age of Sigmar. We then have Heroescape. We then have, which I think is a new release this year, which we will talk about kind of how ICV2 tracks year by year, etc. We then have Marvel Crisis Protocol from Atomic Mass Games. We then have Halo Flashpoint from Mantic. Great to see Mantic up there. We then have Bones from Reaper, which is cool. We then have A Song of Ice and Fire from Simon. And finally, we have Warmachine from Steamforged Games, which, Warmachine sent me this lately. This is their Shadows and Scum set. I'll talk about that in a moment because, well, as I talk about everything else, I'll probably start to talk about Warmachine and which games I would have expected to see on there, like, for example, more from Atomic Mass Games like Legion, Shatterpoint, where's Infinity, where's Malifaux, all of these other niche things, where's the rest of Mantic? Cool, so anyway, let's have a quick look at last year. Not that, here we go. So they only gave us the top 5 last year. And again, we've got 40k at the top. We then have D&D, we then have Battletech, then we have Shatterpoint, then we have Marvel Crisis Protocol. If we look at that, so interestingly this year, D&D and Battletech swapped over. That's interesting. And then Age of Sigmar was 4th, Crisis Protocol was 5th. Age of Sigmar doesn't even appear on this one, whereas Shatterpoint was up there last year, presumably because that's when it released. Was that last year? Oh, time is such a blur, honestly. I think that was last year. Maybe it was the year before. Anyway, we've got that. Cool. And then Marvel Crisis Protocol this year, we have that swapped around a bit. So we have Crisis Protocol dropped out of the top 5. Replaced by Age of Sigmar, which is now above it, whereas it wasn't before, clearly. And then Heroescape, which is new to the scene this year. So all super interesting, all really interesting stuff. I do like to see it, and I think we can now I'll embigger myself a little bit so that we get there. Cool, so you can see what I'm doing here a little bit more. So let's just have a think. So first things first, whenever I reference other miniature games, and this is showing how old I am, I suppose, and how mired in legacy I am, whenever I think of games that challenge GW and 40k, you will all, if you notice, I always reference Infinity and I reference Malifaux, and I would also reference Warmachine, because these all come from the same rough time period. I'm going to say around 2014, 2012, 2014, where they all these were the big games at that time, and clearly I'm just mentally stuck there. But this is really interesting. So, to be clear, this is we could look at some of these and say, well, this is why this is on the list in this place this time. For example, battletech, a little bit of speculation, battletech has just shipped a Kickstarter, but it was also in their last year, so it kind of makes sense. If I have never played battletech, I don't know how the system works, I've never seen it played, but it's here. So clearly I need to get on it. I've never even asked people, hey, is anybody out there that can teach me battletech? Maybe I'd be instantly swarmed by people, because it is, like everybody says, it's like the second biggest universe outside of 40k. 40k obviously just throws everything at the wall and sees what sticks. And because it does that, I'm thinking in regards to, you know, libraries, novels, literature, obviously. And battletech does a similar thing, so they both have very expansive, full, fleshed out worlds. We then get D&D. D&D totally makes sense, but of course this is only for the miniature side of D&D, which isn't the primary selling point of D&D, so we shouldn't look at this and say, oh, well, D&D isn't as big as 40k or battletech. No, it's just people don't need miniatures. People need dice, okay? I'm sure if we could look at dice sales, D&D would be right at the top there. Age of Sigmar coming in fourth. Why would this be at fourth here, but then not even on the top 5 last year? Probably, if I had to guess, because this would be taking into account, I assume, the fact that Age of Sigmar just had a new edition launch. As we all know, whenever a new edition gets launched, people are hyped for it. That's why I would assume GW does its 3-year cycle, because that's roughly how long people stay interested in a particular thing. You drop a new edition, there's lots of new eyes on it. You get old players returning to see what's up. You get new players coming in for the first time because it's like, oh, eyes are on it, let's take a look. So that's why we see the bump for Age of Sigmar there, which is great. It's really going to be interesting to see how that is reflected in a year's time, to see if it maintains that, because then we could quite happily say that, oh, Age of Sigmar has actually grown in size from 3rd edition, which would be really cool, but we don't know. We then see Shatterpoint gone, and that's really interesting. Now, Shatterpoint presumably was up there because it was taking into account the fact that it just launched last year. So its sales would, of course, been very high. In fact, we know that Shatterpoint sold out of their first run of core boxes, which is very impressive, really good to see. And now it's not on there at all. That's really interesting. I have heard people speculate that they've had trouble keeping stock of things. Perhaps that's it. They've just literally hit a production capacity, and so they can't sell enough to get in the top 10. That's possible. Or maybe it fell off. We literally have no idea. There's no way to, you know, it's all speculation at this point. HeroScape. I haven't paid any attention to this. I think HeroScape's one of these things that it's like the HeroClix system, so I think there's probably a lot of nostalgia out there for some older people. And also, I assume it is still quite very, very kid-friendly, so you get a lot of kids in there. Hashtag cringe, pass, thank you. Marvel Crisis Protocol still going strong there, really good to see. Personally, I'm not a Disney guy, not a Marvel guy, but it's great to see that something skirmish-based is up there. If it's anything like Shatterpoint, which I did quite enjoy the system of, it's good that AMG is really supporting that. Love to see it. Then we get Mantic, the first time I've ever seen them on one of these lists, with Halo Flashpoint. I really like a lot of Mantic's systems. Yeah, no notes. I really like a lot of what they do. They just straight up take GW systems, concepts, and say, let's make that easier and better. And they do a pretty good job of that. So it's not for everybody, obviously. It does end up with their own system, their own spin on things. But I have I would never not recommend a Mantic game to someone because of the rules. The models, questionable, but I think they've done a good job with the Halo Flashpoint models. If you like Halo, great place to get into. Otherwise, check out Dead Zone, Firefight, Kings of War, whatever you fancy. I don't know anything about Bones. They're just a miniatures lines. I don't think they have a rule set behind them. It's just models, which are cheap, often used for D&D, I think, and third-party game systems. So cool to see them up there. Song of Ice Fire by Simon. I was briefly really into Song of Ice and Fire. I think it's got a really interesting rule set. I really quite enjoyed it. I would struggle to not recommend the rule set to anybody. And the models are great. And they're fully coloured plastics. You don't have to paint them if you don't want to, but also you can if you do. It's a rank and flank, but it's super streamlined and easy. It doesn't feel like hard work. I thoroughly recommend it. It's a really good blend of board game to a rank and flank tabletop war game. And then we got Warmachine by Steamforged. And sorry, this is where I'm going to stop. So and just start talking about Warmachine, because last week I was watching a YouTube channel called Lords of War. You've probably seen them. One of them regularly features on Guerrilla Miniature Games' podcast. And they did a podcast, they did it every day or every other day. They do a chat where it's just the two of them having a chat about a topic of the day. And they did one, which I had to click on because, you know, I like Steamforged, I like Privateer Press, I like Warmachine. And they were talking about, did Warmachine fail? In case you don't know, Warmachine launched a new edition like 2 years ago, and then Steamforged bought Warmachine from Privateer Press. I'm going to say a year, not even 8 months ago, something like that, right? Something like that. And obviously, when there's a big shake-up like that, a new edition, a new company, you've got to ask yourself, how is it doing? And that's exactly the question the Lords of War guys were asking. And don't get me wrong, I listened to it, it was a totally fine thing. They didn't say anything controversial at all, it's fine. However, they were relating everything about Warmachine to 40k and Games Workshop. I was like, what are you doing, guys? Huh? That's irrelevant. I promise you, every other company in this list does not rate themselves compared to Games Workshop. In fact, I ran into one of the guys from Mantic at one of their trade shows they did, and I said, oh, how's it going? You know, how's Halo Flashpoint selling? I'm really excited for it. And they said, yeah, really good. And they were talking to people when they were at Adepticon last year, whatever. And they said something really interesting. They said that, oh yeah, we heard some of the Shatterpoint, the Marvel Crisis Protocol people, the X-Wing people saying they're really interested and they're considering coming over and having a look. I said, oh, okay, what about the Kill Team guys? You know, it's another skirmish game. And they were like, oh, we don't. Games Workshop isn't our competition. And I thought that was really interesting because it's true. They're not. So much of Games Workshop are Games Workshop die-hard loyalists, right? They are like, I don't care about Warmachine. Oh, sorry, I don't care about wargaming. I just like the world. Maybe I'm just into the lore. Maybe I'm just into the hobby and the models. But I'm Games Workshop because that's the biggest community online, and I feel like I'm a part of something. And 40k is the biggest of that. And that was really quite eye-opening that someone that is in a company that you might consider as a competitor to Games Workshop just says, no, we don't compete against Games Workshop. We don't care about what they do because they're not our competitors. Someone that is willing to play a Mantic game is not, they're not threatened by Games Workshop and what they do, which is really interesting, I thought. So anyway, talking about Warmachine, the Lords of War guys were only comparing Warmachine to Games Workshop. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting because it's irrelevant. It means nothing to say that, oh, Warmachine had a new edition and 40k had a new edition. Which one's done better? Who cares? It's irrelevant. So I had left a comment, you know, being very, very positive. I don't go to other people's comments and troll and say, oh, what a stupid thing to say. I said, oh, it'd be really interesting to know how Warmachine has performed compared to another game system that has either just launched or whatever, like Atomic Mass Games. It'd be interesting to know how Warmachine has compared to Shatterpoint. And we see Warmachine on there, but not Shatterpoint. Likewise, Infinity from Corvus Belli has just launched a new edition of Infinity and a new war game called Warcrow. It would be really interesting to know how has Warmachine performed compared to those. It's really hard to know when you're on the inside because you get so many people just glazing the game completely and we get no actual sales data. And because you're in there, you actually see a lot of negative comments as well. We just don't know. There's no way to know how X deals with Y and yeah. So to see this, to see Warmachine actually appear in the top 10, I'm legit shocked by. Because from all the negativity within the community, I would have actually assumed they're not on the top 10. But then to also not see Infinity, which generally in the community only gets positive praise, not on there, really interesting. Yeah, so really great. Oh, I suppose this is cool. Look at these bad mans. I love them. I really like Warmachine. I'm a Games Workshop channel. Let's be clear on that. Obviously mainly Kill Team, but I also play other games they do. And even that, I have a Warmachine shelf. I love Warmachine. The trenches are coming out, the grave diggers. I'm so hyped. I don't care if they give me a set, I'm buying all 3 of the boxes they do. I just love them. Moving on, I'm just saying, look at this, look at this. This guy is mini Angron. I'm going to turn these guys into 8-bound for my World Eaters army. This guy, Hellbrute. Anyway, you know why my orcs are blue? Because they're trolls. Because they're Warmachine trolls. That's the actual answer, by the way. So cool. Anyway, really good to see a list. I suppose I will quickly caveat a few things if you've made it to the end here. You might notice Kill Team isn't on there. Warcry isn't on there. Necromunda isn't on there, and that's because Kill Team, this is a guess by the way, Kill Team is a 40k game. If you look at the, if you look at the old logo of Kill Team, do I have a logo here? No, I don't. I don't know where it is. It says Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team. If you ever look at the tags that I use in my videos, or in my video descriptions, I always say, welcome to this Warhammer 40k Kill Team video. Because Kill Team uses the 40k logo, so I have to assume that the fact that 40k is at the top is including Kill Team. Now obviously us Kill Teamers, us 40kers, know very different games, very different systems, they just happen to use the same model. But if you think about miniature lines, Kill Team can be used in 40k, some 40k can be used in Kill Team, right? So it makes sense. Likewise, Warcry with Age of Sigmar. And for what we know, roughly, it seems like Kill Team is selling a little bit less, maybe, than Age of Sigmar. So 40k at the top there is basically, take that plus take Age of Sigmar again. It's that high up. It's mad, as we all know. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, I believe that this is only using data, again, from one particular distribution company, which is therefore discounting all sales that go through other companies. For example, Games Workshop might be using, let me just explain roughly how this might work. A local game store says, hi Games Workshop, my company, my customers I want to stock your products, can you send me some? And they say, yes, get in touch with our guy, that's our distributor network. Cool. But then somebody goes to the Games Workshop website and orders something from Games Workshop. Games Workshop ships it from their factory. The Alliance network, this data will not include somebody ordering from the GW website. And that will hold true for AMG as well, for Warmachine, for Simon, for Battletech, all that stuff. This is, this is just roughly, it's very hard to know actual numbers. That's the thing, nobody knows actual numbers. But there you go. Anyway, so I personally am heartened to see Warmachine in that top 10. I really hope that that proves that Steamforged Games has done well to get enough sales to be in the top 10. I'm pretty shook that other games, as discussed, Infinity, Warcrow, their new fantasy game, aren't on there, considering that is a release that definitely should have been on there from this year. If Warmachine's on there, they should be on there, and they're not. That's interesting. Good to see the Halo Flashpoints up there. And those are my main takeaways. I'm glad to see Mantic up there. I hope that it gives them some sort of recognition. And I'm also glad to see Steamforged Games Warmachine up there. Now, I will say, slight proviso, I love the world of Warmachine. I love the models of Warmachine. The game isn't really for me these days, I've finally decided. But as soon as they drop a skirmish game, or they do a new edition so that they change their core rule set into something a little bit more something, I will be right there. Steamforged Games, reach out. If you want to do a skirmish game, hit me up. I've already written the rule set. Let's do it. It's only trenches, by the way. So yeah, there you go. I think it's really interesting. Anyway, if you made it to the end of the video, serious question, because we all have our blind spots. What game do you think should have been on there? An obvious one is Shatterpoint. Do you know why Shatterpoint isn't on there? But is there another game that you're aware of that has dropped but isn't making a splash in the top 10? Do you have any idea what number 11 is? You know, what should be there that isn't? Because one thing that I try to do, look, my channel is Games Workshop, okay? I've accepted that. I've accepted my lot in life in YouTube algorithm world, but I just love mechanics. I actually just love to learn mechanics and learn to design and think about games. I don't put it on my channel now, it is what it is, but if there's something really hot that's dropped and you think should be up here and or like, you know, deserves to be up here, legit, let me know and I probably will go check it out. There are of course lots of indie games. For example, a common one is called Moonstone, right? A lot of people love Moonstone. There's also Relic Quest. These things have really interesting rule sets, but nobody would expect them to be in a top 10 list, right? But do you think there is anything that should be there that has that mass market appeal and that better rule set? I'll be really interested to hear that. Cool, well thank you for watching everybody. This has been interesting. I love to know sales data. For me, it's partly because I'm currently thinking, Jesus, I don't stop, do I? I'm partly currently getting into a bit of 40k, a bit of Age of Sigmar, right? And I'm thinking of doing another channel for it. We'll see how that goes. I need to learn to play the games first if I can actually stand it. And one of the things that I want to do is, so what I'm doing is I'm reaching out, I'm saying, hey, can anybody teach me Age of Sigmar? And I did that, and nobody responded. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be forced into 40k because for whatever reason, 2 local game clubs, nobody responds to me about Age of Sigmar. As soon as I drop that, can anyone teach me 40k? I've got people saying, yeah, I'll show you. It's like, ugh, all right. Don't get me wrong. I probably should be playing 40k instead of Sigmar, but it would be nice to have the option for myself, you know? I've really accepted I'm no longer motivated enough to be a scene starter. I don't want to be the one pushing Infinity, pushing Warcrow, pushing Warmachine, you know? Like, it's beyond me these days. I've got too much going on in my life. I've got, you know, I've got to cut my hair, wash my hair, you know, that takes a long time. I've got to pencil in my eyebrows, whatever. I've got to cry about just politics, Jesus. Am I right, lads? What's the state of the world, am I right? We've taken a turn. Thank you for watching, everybody. Stay cool, stay high.